Hi, and welcome to another episode of our podcast, FXRefreshed, where each time we catch up with industry professionals from the world of supply chain and logistics. Today, we met with Anthony Petitte, CEO and founder of TruckPark INC, where we covered a number of topics, but specifically including the well-being and wellness of truck drivers. We hope you enjoy. Excellent. All right, my friend. Well, why don't we just jump straight in? TruckPark Inc. Why don't you actually, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what kind of led to the creation of TruckPark Inc., especially given from what I can see on LinkedIn, your background, not necessarily in logistics. So why don't we kick off with that?
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, thank you, Mark, for having me on the podcast today. I'm very excited to talk to the audience about truck parking and how we started Truck Park and answer any kind of questions that I can while I'm on here. So really, the long story short is my uncle was the person who got me into the trucking business. I actually had 6 years in digital marketing and search engine optimization experience working for financial lending companies. And that really wasn't even close to logistics or anything of that nature. So my uncle was a truck driver. He was a Teamster driver, so he did short haul, but he also had problems finding parking because he lived in the city of Chicago. And as everybody knows, living in Chicago, there's no ordinances that says that you can park your truck in your driveway. So you always had to find a parking space. And he was a truck driver for 30 years. So he had an issue even way back in the 70s, 80s, trying to find safe, secure truck parking. So flash forward to kind of how I got started is he reached out to me, the background in digital marketing, asked me to build up a website for his parking facility that he had in Chicago. And for those listening who are born in Chicago or have lived in Chicago, there's this parking facility called Sandy's Truck Lot, and it's on 87th Street, which is right off the Dan Ryan Expressway if you're heading south. And that was his parking facility. He, at the time, had about 800 spaces, and he needed to fill all of them. I mean, that obviously, as everybody else's goal in the world of owning any type of real estate, is you want to have as much occupancy rates, highest occupancy rate as possible. And so with that being said, I did help him. I built up a website. We got ranked on Google and Bing and all the fancy pages and started to contact truck drivers in the local area, which honestly had no idea how to even do, right? So I was calling truck drivers and stumbling over my words and not using the right terminology. And even so, the drivers knew what I was talking about. They said, yeah, absolutely. I understand truck parking. It is very difficult finding parking, let alone in Chicago. And so we actually filled up about 80% of his facility within 7 months or 6 to 7 months.
Wow.
It was a beautiful thing. Just kind of to bring some color about my uncle. Unfortunately, he's deceased now, but he was a very old school type of guy. He never had an email his entire life. His cell phone looked like it was pretty much even before the Nokia phones came out. He had the flip phone from like Alcatel pretty much. So he never adjusted to the times. He's very old school, but that's why he brought me in to bring in the new school type of play to the truck parking world. And so as I digress here, that's really how Truck Park started. That's the origin.
Fantastic. That's awesome. That's fantastic. That's a really great background as well. And also, I mean, I suggested that you not necessarily having a trucking background, but having that SEO experience, having that website build experience to, I guess, test your theory with his truck park. So now we have this. We've built the website, but was it specific to his truck park, and did you come up, was it called Truck Park at that point in time, or did you think, you know what, we've built this for him, surely it makes sense to be able to build this out for thousands of other spaces, but actually you own that I guess that process?
Yeah, it was called Truck Park at the time, and that's how the name began. My uncle just had www.truckpark.com, which we purchased together, which was definitely not an inexpensive purchase, but because it's just such a great name, when you think about it, it's everything's so self-explanatory. It's Truck Park. Like, what do? You park trucks. So,
that's exactly what it says on the tin. Yeah.
it was very simple, but like I was saying, my uncle was old school, so his mind was kind of one track. It was like, let's just park trucks on my facility. But my mind was, if I'm going to be helping you, why don't we scale this and we can help operators, meaning parking owners all over the country, do the same thing as what I'm helping you do, which is increase your occupancy rates, monetize some of your underutilized property, make sure that I'm showing visibility on the website of your property so that when drivers type in I need truck parking in so-and-so area on Google, they're able to find you. And so he didn't really understand and grasp the concept because he just was so focused on how can we get truck parking, or how can we get truck drivers to park at our facility. Where I was focused on how can we provide truck parking to everybody all across the country. So either way, finally what happened is he said, you know what, I'm gonna let you do your thing, I trust you. And really that's how Truck Park began. That's how we really started reaching out to local owners, local parking owners that have existing truck parking facilities already set up in Chicago. And more were receptive to say, okay, we can get you from 50% occupancy, to 75% occupancy. And they would ask, how are you going to increase my occupancy by 25%? We say, well, right now you have no visibility. Nobody knows about your parking facility. It is hidden. It's maybe behind, sometimes they're behind old factory buildings. They're usually in industrial areas. So how do you expect a truck driver or a truck company, a fleet, to find you if you don't have any visibility on where your location is? And then that's how we sold it, the operators.
Fantastic. So I guess there was a lot of trial and error with the first build in terms of like even your own marketing approach as well. You freely admitted there that you were stumbling over your words and not using maybe the right terminology. So now we're moving on to the second and the third and the fourth one, and each and every time I'm sure it's getting better and better, right?
Yeah, there is a lot of trial and error in this business. There's a trial and error in every business that you do, especially in the trucking industry, though. There's just so much that goes on. It's so fragmented. You got truck drivers searching for parking. You got operators saying, I want to increase my occupancy rate. You have the driver getting to the parking facility and the operator not through Truck Park, but outside of Truck Park saying, I don't understand how you got here. And there's a lot of trial and error to get in front of the game. And we think we've almost built like an algorithm, so to speak, to really get ahead of things and create a better experience for the drivers.
Right. Was there, excuse me, was there a ton of skepticism when you were speaking to the truck parks initially? Especially when you're explaining to them that you can take them from 50 to 75%.
How was the reactions? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
They were just, like I said, they were super excited about the opportunity. I would say 80% of them were, 20% would say, hey, I'm at 99% occupancy and this is not a fit for us. We don't need parking. We don't need help. The 1% to get to that level wouldn't be an issue. And frankly, some of them had great websites and potentially were ranked on Google. But the majority of them, I would say 80 to 90, maybe even 95% of them, they're just old school operators. They don't have websites. They're just there. They're just in an industrial park somewhere, and they're hoping that a driver passes them and maybe backs up a little bit. I can park there. Or pull up a local fleet in the area and say, hey, would you like to, have your trailer stored here, your empties? So that's how the operators typically work. But the ones that want visibility, we have broad visibility to them. So.
Right. And this is, I suppose you're not just really helping out the truck park owners, you're also satisfying the truck drivers themselves. So even those truck parks that have this 99% occupancy, still having them be part of the group, if you will, makes sense, right? Because it could be that the truck driver still would prefer to have, I guess, a certain truck stop rather than maybe another. And it could be that this particular truck park that has, that typically has high occupancy could be in a better location. And so are you still trying to sign up these types of parks despite maybe having high occupancy rates?
Yeah, we are. So now that we have built I guess, like historical value in the market, more operators, parking owners, so to speak, are interested to sign up with us, even if they have higher occupancy rates, because they know that we can still fill them based on historical value. Now, years ago, as I was saying, the operators would say, absolutely not. I'm okay. You're a new company. What are you going to do for me?
Absolutely. Are you finding that the conversation is now more inbound than it is outbound? So you're receiving more phone calls from truck parks now that they found out about you, saying, or asking to be, or begging in some cases maybe, to be added to the site?
Yeah, we get calls all day long saying, how can I get my spots on your marketplace? What do I need to do? What are the steps? It's fairly easy. If they just call us, we walk through the steps with them. It honestly can take 10, 15 minutes. Of course, if they have questions, maybe longer. Then we have an MSA, which is a partnership agreement. That just dictates the terms of our partnership, which are pretty standard, about a year or two. We can do month to month if it's a larger type of facility, or if they have more locations. Like some of the operators have multiple locations, they're not just the independents. So there's different ways that we structure the partnership, but it's a fairly easy process getting set up.
Right. So 10 to 15 minutes and they're phoning. Is there any plans to automate that process so that truck parks can literally log in, see the terms and conditions, sign up there, and then choose the tenor of which they want to sign up for, whether it's a month to month, year, or 2 years? Any plans to automate that process?
Yeah, so we want to really do that with our application, and then we built up a fleet platform called TruckPark Reserve, and it's really for fleets to manage parking, to book reservation on behalf of the drivers. We've actually even had discussions with brokers to book reservations on behalf of their carriers, and really just trying to create this truck parking ecosystem, a market like it's never done before. And within those platforms, we want to create pages where operators can find the website and then actually sign up. And we did something similar. We had an old website before the current went down, and we had a lot of spam. So we're trying to figure out more of a holistic approach to this, if you will. So what I mean by that is, instead of just everybody being able to sign up, utilize it from the TruckPark website, because we get so many visitors and impressions, if the only way to find that page on TruckPark Reserve is to become a customer of ours. And becoming a customer is 100% free. You don't pay until you actually want to park trucks. So that's what we're probably trying to do. We're trying to filter some of the spam, and to answer your question, yes, we want to definitely automate the process.
Right. Okay. And according to your website, you're at almost around, or at 2 million truck drivers right now. That's a pretty impressive number. Did you expect to have that number of downloads, if you will, or clients by 4 years now?
4.5 years now. We do not have that number of downloads. That 1.7 million truck drivers is actually from multiple channels. And the way that we do it is essentially, we have partnerships with DAT, Trucker Tools, Coyote Logistics, Project 44, Echo Logistics, and all of those brokers or 3PLs or digital freight companies, however you'd like to phrase them. They have access to their hundreds of thousands, millions of truck drivers. So we take kind of a compilation of all of those digital freight platforms and kind of say, okay, we have 1.7, maybe we have more, maybe we have all of the truck drivers with accessibility to our platform. But we do have a fairly large number of downloads and app metrics. So a lot of drivers are using this all over the country, in Canada, And we're just very happy for how we got here today.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And this is it's a unique proposition for both the truck driver and the park owner. But despite that, and you've clearly figured out the niche in the market and clearly understand what is needed from both parties, if you will. But despite that, are you somewhat surprised by the success, or this is exactly where you thought you might be 4.5 years on?
Great question. Not surprised, because we know drivers have been longing secure truck parking for decades.
Right.
Surprised in regards to how quickly it's taken off. Typically, businesses such as a marketplace takes 10 to 15 years to really make a big impact in the industry. I think, opposed to solving a problem like car parking, rather, where everybody needs parking in the cars, especially in metropolitan cities. But it's not just because you need parking, it's not a restriction, it's not mandatory that you need to park at that location. Whereas truck parking, these drivers, because of the ELD that commenced in 2017, they are forcibly needing to pull over at a certain time, otherwise they get fined. So it's a completely different market. I think that's where we had such big ramp ups, is where drivers like, I actually need parking. I would say one other thing is, in the last 9 months, rate per mile rates have increased. So if you look at historically at some of the data that even like Freightways, Sonar, that they've put out there, is that in 2010, or excuse me, 2020, it was $2.83, for example, for rate per mile. As of June 2021, it's at $3.87 or $4.10, and these numbers have doubled. And when rate per mile is doubled, drivers feel more comfortable with paying for parking.
Right. Does that this might be a bit of a dumbass question, but so with that rate increase, is that encouraging drivers to? I know that they're only allowed to travel for certain periods during the 24-hour period, or sorry, they're only allowed to be in the truck, I guess, and actually moving for a limited number of hours throughout a 24-hour period. But the increase in rate per mile, does that encourage drivers to maybe make sure that they maximize the time that they're allowed to be in the chair? And if they are going that little bit further, then the importance of having that truck stop like known to them in advance is probably quite key, I would have thought.
Yes, so it's all based on it's geospatial, right? It's based on geography, and drivers are they really utilize our platform for route planning purposes. So, if they're driving from Chicago to Kansas City, for example, and they need a place to park, they utilize TruckPark for that resource. So yeah, it does take place. Essentially, truck parking can be a 24-hour period if they're parking for that 24-hour. Typically, what we've seen in terms of aggregated data on our platform is that drivers really only utilize it for about 8 to 12 hours, which is essentially their rest period. And sometimes they use it for 30 minutes, because that could be the rest period as well. They can utilize it for drop trailers. They can be at that parking facility for 2 hours, and they're, it's like a freight buddy or freight friend or freight pal, however you want to say it. They come and they pick up the trailer. That's how obviously the drop trailers work. So there's just so many different ways that we position ourselves in the market. But typically, I would say we give truck drivers about 24 hours lapse to stay at the truck parking facility and be comfortable and get a good overnight rest.
Right. That's awesome. And so how are you tracking that then? You mentioned that 8 to 12 hours typically could be 30 minutes. How are you uncovering that data?
That's a great question. So it's really difficult to track data when you're talking about, like, how are we going to track every second, every movement of the driver without being connected through GPS? Because we're not essentially an ELD, or we're not essentially a TMS product. We're not tracking these drivers every movement. But the way that we do it is we set up, as we discussed, a 24-hour period, and within certain times we send out notifications. So the application is automated. It sends out a automated notification to the driver saying you have 2 hours left, or you have 1 hour left. It's time to move your truck. We also can look at some of the data by movement within the parking facility if they leave the facility. Some of them are gate code entry. So they have to type in a gate code when they enter the facility. So then we know when they typed in that gate code, because we have our system automatically sends a code to the driver once they make the reservation or when they enter the parking facility. And then we also know when they're leaving, because you still have to press a button to lift up the gate when they exit the facility. So those are typical, I guess, big data endpoints that we utilize to know when the driver's moving, but we do not have GPS, and we don't want to kind of get into that type of game, if you will, because there could be some privacy laws around that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Nobody wants to fall foul of that. The geotechnology that you spoke about, is this a proprietary software, or are you piggybacking off the back of like a Google Map technology?
So you can't patent technology because it's intangible. That's what we learned in the very beginning from our intellectual property attorneys.
Right.
What you could do is you could create technology so close knit that it is almost hard to replicate. So we've created something where we believe that TruckPark can own this. Not necessarily a company can come in with more money and say, or more capital rather, and say, we're going to build out the same type of platform and we're going to do the same thing that you guys are doing. But we've just created a brand essentially in the market, right? And while technology is not patentable because it's intangible, something that's tangible to people that you can physically touch is that brand, right? You can't figuratively or physically touch you can't physically, but you can figuratively touch a brand where it's touching you in the inside. The drivers know TruckPark. TruckPark is helping these unsung heroes find secure parking. So that's what we've created to be essentially patentable, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Is this the first company that you've built?
This is the second company I built that's of scale, because the first company I built, funny enough, was when I was 9 years old. I started a company that I now that's in my head. I walked dogs. I walked 7 dogs in my neighborhood, different neighbors, all 7. I also washed cars and I mowed lawns. And I created a business called AP Services. This is Anthony Petitte. So AP Services was very successful. It ran for about 3 years, and we did essentially probably about $30,000 worth of business. And we were very successful at what we did, and it was myself and I hired my buddy. So we were 9 and 10 years old. And the beauty part of it is everybody asks me, it's like, well, what'd you ever do with all that money? It's like, well, eventually I was able to put it in a bank, but I stuffed it in a dictionary inside in my room behind a bunch of books. So we did very well. We were kids, and that's kind of my funny story. It's maybe not a business, if you will, but of scale, but it was a business.
That in and of itself is a phenomenal that's a phenomenal story, right? I mean, first of all, when you were talking about walking dogs, I'm like, yeah, you know what, we've all done that. And then you're adding these additional services to it, giving it a name, and then generating $30,000 off the back of it. I'm like, yeah, that's probably nowhere close to anywhere where I was at. Thinking back to my paper round as a 9-year-old, earning 3/4 of nothing. That's amazing. And then, so jumping into this, so you mentioned earlier on that your uncle was kind of a catalyst for this, but now you've kind of come up with the idea and the notion of this is what's needed. How quickly was it from having that initial conversation with your uncle to finally getting the app released and then seriously making those phone calls to other truck parks?
I would say it was roughly 7 or 8 months is when the time that really had these initial discussions with my uncle. Uncle was, again, the type of guy, he was old school, but he was really quick. It was like, let's get this done. We need to get this done. And I was like, okay, well, I'll build a website. Don't really know what I'm doing because I don't know anything about transportation or logistics, but I'll build a website based on what you're telling me. And we just had more conversations, and he took me to the parking facility that he had, and we toured it, and I sat there for a couple of weeks and just watched truck drivers going in and out and learn the operation there. So I would say 7 or 8 months was probably that time frame to really learn it. Things going.
Okay. That's pretty quick. That's pretty quick. And how are you uncovering the locations of these truck stops now that you're relatively established? We talked earlier on that you're probably getting a significant number of calls directly, so inbound. But like, how are you? I guess you're still looking at the outbound stuff, right? You're still making those proactive phone calls, still trying to find those truck stops. How are you uncovering them? How are you finding them? Is that just a simple Google search, or am I being a complete idiot?
So we're being very creative in the way that we approach this truck parking market, right? So we're looking at it from all sides. We're saying, okay, well, we can continue to build and go after the existing traditional truck parking facilities, which look like fence-in perimeter, man guard, camera surveillance, etc. The other approach that we looked at is where are other properties that drivers are currently utilizing that may not be on our platform. And so we start looking at hotels. And we haven't announced it yet, but we have a major chain hotel that we're going to be adding to the platform, and drivers could experience great discounts at those hotels, get a great overnight rest. We're working on a whole parking operation with them for them to park, because if you really think about it, especially with the pandemic, there's all these large parking lots that are just open. They're empty right now. Yeah. People going to hotels because some states are closed, or some states are, if they're open, they're very restricted. So there's plenty of parking for the drivers. We've looked at gyms, right? Some gyms, and why are we going after gyms? Well, the way we see it is gyms have a lot of property, right? They have open plots of land where they can park trucks. And then in the meantime, we're trying to help drivers have a healthier lifestyle.
Right.
The gym, and we're creating discounts. And one of the best things was, which we have a partnership now with Planet Fitness. So I could say that it's contractual, and we haven't launched it in our lifestyle program yet, but it will allow the drivers to not have to be committed to gyms. Usually when you sign up for a gym, you have to be committed for a year or 2 years, and trying to get out of the gym is like going into a deposition almost arbitrary. So we have created a system for the drivers to have no commitments every month. They can quit whenever they want. So we're really looking at the entire truck parking ecosystem very creatively. We want to create as many ways as possible for drivers to find safe parking.
Right. That's fantastic. Again, is there, so besides that, and that sounds like a lot, what's the next plan then? What else are you trying to do, either as a company or for the drivers?
Our next plan for the drivers is to create a really robust driver feedback system. So we've created a system now where drivers are able to input their feedback. I think it's like a kind of beta tested, so it's kind of like a box or something that they can give their feedback based on experience of the operator, the site, the park, also experience at Truck Park, and just how they like to utilize the app and how it helps them find safe parking. We're trying to create more of a gamified process. We want them to, and I'll give an example here, if you get out of an Uber or a Lyft, and it immediately sends you a screen that says, rate your system, and there's a 5-star rating, and then you can press a bunch of they call them radio buttons, like, is the car clean, is it dirty, is it, did you like the driver, etc. So we're going to literally get very granular in some of our data and how we really ask the drivers and how they like it, because at the end of the day, it's about the drivers. This business was started from the drivers. Uncle is a truck driver. So it's a very personal business to us. We want to make sure that we're personalizing our feedback and making sure that we can create a better experience for the driver every day.
Yeah, I saw from your website that you launched a MasterCard, or at least you have a MasterCard branded credit card.
So we haven't launched that yet. That is something that we are hoping to launch with the hotels and the gyms. It's going to be a whole lifestyle program. And essentially drivers, it's all about the lifestyle of the driver. In fact, the feedback and the focus groups and conversations that we've had with drivers have suggested to us through data that they are just looking for something that's going to really help them, not just fuel and maintenance. That's great. That's awesome. Cars provide that right now. But past the fuel and maintenance, what is the missing pieces of the puzzle? And the drivers have, based on a census of the drivers, they've come back and said, well, we want to be healthier. We sit in our trucks all day long. We want to also talk to people. We sit in our trucks all day long. We don't talk to anybody, and it gets boring. Sometimes we'll get close to a driver and do the old school TV radio. But after that, what do? You're just sitting there all day long by yourself. So we're trying to create different ways that we can really help the driver and help their lifestyles. We're trying to create a lifestyle opportunity. So that's what the MasterCard is for. But again, we haven't launched it yet, and we're still working on it because we really want to create the ultimate experience. This would be I wouldn't say our final product, but it would definitely be one of the best products that we would ever put in the market. And it's going to change. Nobody's doing it right now. It's only fuel. We want to create the best. And that's why we've not stalled. That's probably the wrong word, but we've definitely done our best to create the best experience for drivers.
Yeah, this is fantastic, not only for the existing truck drivers out there, but for maybe those that have been in the game and then have just packed it up because of the lifestyle. So maybe this might encourage the drivers to come back, maybe encourage new drivers to get into the system, as it were, because we talk about the driver shortage, if you will. It might not necessarily be that there's a shortage of drivers because there are a number of qualified individuals out there, but I guess the number of bums in seats is significantly less than 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and 10 years ago. So what you're doing is pretty much single-handedly like helping people have that better lifestyle, live a bit longer, but also bring people back into the game, right?
Truck parking. We've created a marketplace that essentially encompasses all parts of the trucking industry. Obviously we're not moving freight, and we're not hosting freight, and we're not warehousing services, but we're helping drivers find safe and secure parking, which is essentially and has been the top 3 largest issues for decades, if not in the last 10 years. And with that, we've also created, if you want to say like routes or buckets or branches, and part of those branches are creating ancillary services. Like we have a partner with an on-demand fuel company that they can service truck drivers within parking facilities if they don't want to go to a gas station because they're tired or because their hours of service ended. We'll come to you. We've created services like one of our partners with the telemedicine. Drivers don't have to go to a doctor back in their hometown. They can essentially have a telehealth conversation with a doctor anywhere in the country, because if they're over the road, they're most likely not going to be going home anytime soon. So there's different ways that we've built our marketplace to essentially tackle a much larger picture than what just truck park was in the very beginning.
Yeah, it's grown tremendously. So you have some aspirations, but clearly there might be a lot of unknown elements out there for you to potentially tap into. But it sounds like you've got the right attitude to continually look at expanding, and to not just sit back and say, right, we've created this, let's just run with it. Because I mean, in and of what itself, what you've created is a phenomenal process, a great product for both sides, and is having a significant amount of success. You're getting that visibility. So it'd be all too easy to sit back and say, right, I can just cash in and away we go. But I get the impression that you're still thinking of, right, okay, what else can we do? Like, what else is out there? And it might not necessarily be obvious right here, right now, but if it presents itself, you strike me as the type of individual that's going to say, right, okay, how can we make that work? How does that fit in with our current solution and our current offering? So kudos to you for that. That's superb. 2020, COVID, I'm going to take a little bit of a step back, probably hurt business. I would have thought we can't not have a conversation without bringing in the pandemic.
Yeah, so the pandemic was just obviously difficult for everybody, all businesses. It's definitely made an impact on the global economy. It made an impact on Truck Park for a few months. The ELD, well, not saying that I'm an advocate of it necessarily, but they loosened the ELD so that drivers could, you know, move the freight and not really have to worry about restrictions, whether that was a good move or not. It impacted us, of course. Drivers were less inclined to park. During that time, a lot of drivers were losing their jobs or pay was being increased. So we were talking about rate per miles. It was very difficult. Like I said, I think it was $2.87 rate per mile in 2020, opposed to almost 1.5 double today. So drivers were less inclined to find and pay for parking. Even if it was a matter of safety for them, they were still less inclined because they didn't have the funds to pay for it, or they figured that the government loosened the restrictions so they can kind of go back to kind of the 80s, 90s days of riding everything out and driving as long as they could to make more money. So, but we don't blame them. It was definitely a kind of a hard knock against us, but we picked up and we continue to say we're not going to change the way we do business. We're not going to increase our rates or have the operators increase their rates so that we could essentially bring more revenue to the business. We kept how we wanted it to be since the very beginning. We just kept promoting Truck Park and showing visibility of our operators all over the country.
That's brilliant. And manufacturing is starting to boost. Again, productivity is increasing in the US. The ports still a little bit of a logjam there, but seemingly are open and processing significant number of inbound freight as well. So with all of that, and hopefully if we can keep the COVID variant under control, fingers crossed, 2021 should be a good year for you, right? It should be a gang-busting year.
Yeah, if we can continue to keep these variants under control, that would be very helpful. I know there's the Delta variant right now, and we're just reading the news, which I'm definitely a big reader when it comes to reading articles. There's something now in South Africa, so we just really just trust and pray that these things are not going to be effective to not just Truck Park, but to anybody in this industry, transportation, logistics, supply chain, because we move the world at the end of the day. So if we get affected, the world gets affected. And so, the biggest thing is to just make sure these drivers are getting overnight rest, making sure they're safe. And if we can do that, we play our part, at least in helping the pandemic, essentially, right? Because, I mean, we look at the big picture. The biggest thing right now is getting your not your flu shots, but your vaccine shots. And it's like, how do you think the vaccine shots make it from the manufacturing facilities to the stores or to the pharmacies? They move it on trucks. So we're just making sure that we could have these drivers as safe as possible, secure as possible, and get the right sufficient sleep so that they can continue moving these products and making the world a better place.
That's brilliant and amazing. And I think the last time I saw the inside of a gym was probably 10 years ago. So maybe I should become a truck driver, sign up to you folks, and then that way I might give myself a bit more of a healthier lifestyle. I need to stop eating donuts as well and maybe curb the Guinness, but that's a conversation for another day. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, they can naturally come through us and we can put them in touch with you. But give us a little bit of a rundown on how can people connect to you through LinkedIn? Where can we get you?
Easiest way to contact us is www.truckpark.com. You can go to our website, you can see or download our applications there, see all of our products and what we do essentially. Another way to find us is info@truckpark.com. Please go ahead and send a message to us. We have a 24/7 customer service line. We'd love to get back to you. And drivers, if you're sitting in your hot seat and you're bored, give us a call. We also will definitely keep you guys afloat and keep you up at night. And we just want to do what helps you guys.
That's brilliant. Well, listen, man, appreciate everything that you've discussed with us today. I'm sure the truck driving and park owners out there as well are appreciating exactly what you're doing. You're making a big difference to a lot of people's lives. Certainly don't underplay that. So it's a fantastic effort to date, and I wish you every success going forward, you and the gang. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.